That's right. I have wrestled with an alligator. I done tussled with a whale. I done handcuffed lightning, throw thunder in jail.
You can't stop me.
I'm going to win.
It ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward.
I won't quit.
I'll just keep getting stronger.
Stronger?
Stronger.
All right, Jeb. Looking forward to this, especially since we don't have Dean here. So, yeah, man. I've been actually. I remember you were doing your own podcast, and I don't know if you still are. Years ago, but I remember you were talking to people in the fitness industry about their life, like outside of fitness as well. And that was always one that I was interested in, like the journey and the struggle and that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, that was fun. I like that. It was hard for me at the time because I was doing so much other stuff to kind of keep up with it and like get people on and like, especially because for me, I don't know about you, but like I listen to like zero fitness podcasts because I find so many of them just excessively boring. Like unless there's a really cool topic on there, like you've been digging into like people like talking more about like neuroscience or like behavioral stuff, but like when someone comes on and talks about their marketing plan, I'm like,
yeah, I don't listen to any podcasts. Like it's just not something I like for as a media format.
I'm the same way. I'd rather read. Like I'd rather grab something, read it. Like I feel like I retain the information better. I don't like people are like, oh, I listen to a podcast on the train or whatever. I'm like, I throw it in my ears and I start thinking, and like everything else goes out.
I do like I go Audible, but I like books. Like I'm a book guy rather than a podcast guy. And
well, since we're gonna like dive into some like stuff about the industry but since we're on that topic, like I know you're working on your big like magnum opus here, your book. How's that coming along?
So it's very close. There's, I believe, 2 more chapters that the editor is going to go through and do the rewrite on. And I've got some people that are working on the graphics and the imaging. So I think that there's a good realistic end date of like the last week of November, first week.
Oh, wow.
November. Yeah, and it's going to go through Renaissance periodization, so it's a bigger market than I've ever been able to be exposed to. And yeah, I mean, look, like this is a 2-year project at this point. So
yeah,
it's a long time coming, and the fact that it's so close is something that feels a little bit surreal in a lot of ways. I stopped writing the thing. I finished writing it 6 months ago, over 6 months ago.
You've just been editing and
like actually, when did I mean, it was done before COVID started.
Oh shit. Okay.
And then I went through it and did an edit job and then sent it over to the editor, and it's 19 chapters. So she averages somewhere around a chapter a week, but sometimes there's, a little bit of a gap, but you got, it's about 22 weeks that it takes to edit something like that. And I think she's done a fantastic job of making the writing flow better and the writing style be, easier to understand and all that kind of stuff. So it's damn near here, it's just, I'm an impatient person. I have compulsivity issues and impulsivity issues. So for something to take that long, my lack of patience gets tested. And especially with a project like this, where there's a lot of pieces that are out of my hands, and I don't work with other people. Like that's not me. I'm my own brand, my own thing. And I choose never to have a partner that I work with. I'm unemployable as a person. So like I don't ever rely on others ever for anything that I do. So but in this particular instance, I need other people. I need graphics people, and so working with a team has been interesting for me and stressful for me because
well, I totally relate. Like I was talking to my therapist, and we were having a conversation, and I said, I came to this realization, I'm just not a team player. Like it's just not like I'm fine to be a team player if every single other person is doing the same amount as I am. The second someone drops below, like I'm going to eat their ass. Like it's going to, come, it's not going to be fun. I'm not going to be nice. And it's like, so it's not an enjoyable experience. Like, and I realize I should have just done it myself, which, but
Tell you, and I feel the same way, but then you run into these things where it's like, I'm not a graphics designer. I
Right.
do not have time to acquire this skill set. And since this person does not have my skill set, it's like I need a team because I need a graphics designer. And then I need someone to be able to point out to them what the images are that need to be included, because it's just mumbo jumbo to them in some ways, like
Sure.
trying to read anatomy and finer details about a thorax. And, it's like, now I'm coordinating so many people on this, and I'm just a terrible boss, like a dictator, and not a benevolent one. So it's very look, like I've chosen to never manage people. I got, my original job was as a professor, so I could be left alone in an office to read and create my own papers and models and other things. And then, I knew, like, there's no way I could work in sports for a team. Like, I'm never going to be a cooperative person with a sports coach. As soon as they say something stupid to me about how I'm supposed to do my job, I'm going to it's going to be a fist fight most likely. Yeah, that's where the project is at. And
how did you find the process of writing a book versus your academic work?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that my academic background was the most helpful thing for this book. My previous books, Mass and Mass 2, were just purely like stream of consciousness, unconscious writing that I just let my unconscious loose on paper with. And that's fun and it's easy. And this thing is structured. It is, it was a disciplined write. It essentially used the same format repeatedly for the chapters in terms of the layout. This was designed to be more of a textbook, as opposed to the previous ones being whatever they are, because I don't ever want to do anything that other people have done before. Like, I want everything that has my name associated with it. I want it to be clearly mine. And, people to be like, oh, that's a Pat Davidson thing right there. Like, no question. It's not anybody else's. That's got his stamp of authenticity put on it. And I still tried to provide that with this book. It's just that it's more difficult when you're it's almost like I wanted to play within the framework of how a textbook is laid out. So it's got, the same way, like it has like its introduction section for each chapter. Then for every trainable pattern, it's got the anatomical considerations for that particular pattern. So if we're talking about vertical pulling, I talk about, scapulae and the humerus and lats and other muscles that attach to those structures. And following that, it has a breakdown of basically all of the available training options for that pattern. So, and it goes in the same order every time: sagittal plane, bilateral stance, and then it'll go sagittal plane, front back stance, and then it breaks into frontal plane, bilateral stance, frontal plane, front back stance, frontal plane, lateral stance, transverse plane, bilateral. So it the same sequence, the same order, but within that, the individuality and uniqueness of each pattern and how you coach it emerges. Following that, it would go into it's almost like you would encounter after anatomical considerations, we get into the sagittal plane bilateral stance version of the exercise, and here's all the options that exist in there. Here's the essence of it. And then at the end of it, it's like coaching points. Here's the things you should really focus on within this realm. And it just repeats that for everything. then when you ultimately get through every iteration of plane stance for the pattern, at the end it goes into dominant fitness realms, which is like, hey, you know, when it comes to vertical pulling, don't get too fucking cute and try to be like, you know, this guy. Like, you got to do pull-ups. Like, that's kind of still the main thing for that particular pattern. And it should be moderate load, moderate velocity. Like, pull-ups aren't meant to be like 1 rep maxes. It's not the, like, when you think about it, this is still, if you don't kind of cover this huge boulder, now you're just playing in the sand in a weird way over here. So make sure you kind of are aware of that. But to me, like, I tried to make the writing disciplined. It was a diligent process. And it was, you know, it's annoying. Like, there's annoying parts of doing something like that, because it's almost like, wait, how did I name it? Did I name it by the stance first, or the plane first, or the and also like the load, the velocity, and the duration. So it's like every single pattern has, you know, stance, plane, load, velocity, duration, and the different breakdowns of that. So it's like, God damn it, which one did I put first? And like, oh, I go back to the previous chapter, and like, you know, I should have, there's probably an easier, by the end of it, I kind of knew the order.
Of course.
Maybe, but like, you know, it was just, there was so much to it. And, you know, it's a book. To me, it's like, you know, I try to, people keep asking me for the elevator pitch version of it. And I'm like, there is no fucking elevator pitch version of it. It's 180,000 words. Like, it's a huge thing. It's my entire training model. But I did, you know, after you try to conceptualize it that many times, these 7 pillars did emerge in my head as being like, this is the foundation of it, you know? And if you go inside of each pillar, unfortunately, it's just a huge can of worms. And inside of that is another can of worms. And inside it, so it's like, I opened as many cans of worms as I possibly could in this book. And I tried to explain all of them in detail. And the hardest part is figuring out when to stop opening cans of fucking worms.
But I also think that's like a huge value of your course for me, was outside of the training ideas, outside of it was this idea of like, hey, using categories can create a framework for you to develop something in such a greater detail. I think so many people try to start at these details and then get lost in that, and then have no actual philosophy. They have no system. And like, you know, as much as people talk about like, oh, systems, this, you got to have something. You got to have a framework to allow yourself to open the can of worms. And I think outside of whether we're talking about this as fitness, just as a critical thinker, I think just giving people this like idea set makes them go, oh shit, like I might be going about everything I'm doing in a way that's inefficient and probably not the best way to do it.
You know, like I don't ever really know what the industry thinks of me or individual people think of me. You know, it's impossible to know that. Maybe, you know, actually, there's probably ways to find that out. I choose not to. At a certain point, you have to be an ostrich that puts their head in the sand.
Yeah.
Because you, like, other people's opinions of you are none of your business in some ways. And, you know, but I would imagine that some people would probably say that I can be too theoretical or too abstract or any of those things. And in my mind, I'm none of those things, you know, but
no, not at all.
Well, you know, that's my own then bias and insecurity. But to me, I try to be the most useful person that I can in terms of assembly of the biggest picture that I possibly can. I'm always trying to zoom as far out as I possibly can and capture the entire landscape and organize the landscape. And then once you're able to do that, like once I have my full Google Maps, now I can kind of zoom in with a satellite and basically be able to, you know, analyze the topography of a specific area in the greatest detail that I possibly can. That's my fucking goal with this. And it's like, where's the elevator pitch? You can't give an elevator pitch. I'm not equinox educator guy. I'm not trying to simplify this necessarily to the point where it's like, oh, hey, check out this model. Oh, basically, like, this is the end range isometric model. Like, no. This is like, I'm trying to tell you where that fits in amongst every other possible thing. Like, it's not a program design model, but here's where program design fits in the greater scheme of the entire thing. You know,
I think that's where people probably get hung up and call it abstract, is because you're not giving them what they expect. You're not saying like, here's a program. You're saying like, no. You'll, if you understand this stuff, everything fits. Like, you'll know, like but you're going to have to put some work in.
Yeah.
That's the rub.
Yeah. You know, it's almost like people are looking for a specific picture, and it's like, yeah, I've got that picture. It's just inside of this picture. And then that picture is inside of this picture, which is inside of this picture. But if you understand the essence of this picture, you understand the essence of the picture outside of it and the picture outside of that, because it's repeating rules that just reinforce themselves. It's like, what's the elevator pitch of evolution? I wanted to make the same kind of a thing, like a theoretical model that if you actually understand the frameworks of it, you never have to worry about like this will explain everything to you, everything. Like, it's all in there, but you will have to zoom in on specific parts to examine like the picture inside of the other picture. Because yeah, if you understand like I one of the ones that pops out to me in my head is in pillar 4, which is movement progression. I've got the 10 principles of progression, and the last one is minimize load. Okay, and I worded it minimize load for a very good reason, because it includes the specific weight of the exercise you're doing right now, but it also includes the entire training load of your entire program. And in the beginning, start with it minimized. Use the lightest possible implement you can for the pattern you're trying to develop and the exercise you're doing right now. And also start with the least amount of training load you can that's going to give you an effective dose. Okay. So this MEV concept, but it's like, hey, inside of this number 10 in pillar 4, if I pull this thing out and I examine it, there's so much theory and practice in that you're going to have to spend a significant amount of time in there to be able to really appreciate that thing. And because there's people that have spent their entire career on that particular area.
Right. Well, and I think too, and again, going back to that abstraction idea, I think the appeal for me in the Rethinking the Big Patterns courses has been that while it is talking about training, I mean, you know, the entire kind of macro approach to it is you're like, hey, like, this is all fitting under this guise of evolutionary biology. So when we like really step back far enough and say like, hey, why do we even move like this?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, then you're like, okay, like, let's understand this from a grand picture instead of like, hey, how can I, you know, squat more in this pattern, you know? And I think for some people that's awesome because it's just opening up this whole other world. For a lot of people, they're like, whoa, this doesn't fit my little box that I want to live in, and it's too much.
Yeah, because you know what you're getting at, like, I'm always like, which pillar? You know, it's pillar 3, which is movement standards. And inside movement standards, there's 3 subdivisions for sagittal plane, frontal plane, and transverse plane. And then the sagittal, and I mean, all of them are ultimately rooted in you know, analysis of evolutionary anatomy, comparative evolutionary anatomy between last common ancestor of chimp and human, and understanding the divergence of the skeleton between our species and ancestors and the chimpanzee's species and ancestors. And it's like, whoa, that's a huge, enormous can of worms. Again, people have spent their entire careers and lives on trying to understand that. And in this model, it's not like I'm not pretending like I am the expert on chimpanzee anatomy. No. I know just enough to be able to know that like, hey, the reason chimpanzees don't move very well in a bipedal manner is because of the orientation of their pelvis, the overall essence and shape of their spine, the place in which the spine inserts in their skull, and the shape of their feet having the big toe being like a thumb on their foot. So it's like that anatomy changes the constraints of their skeleton, And those skeletal constraints don't allow them to be able to do the movements that we can do the way that we do them. And from the perspective of understanding Jacksonian dissolution, the more that you lose the essence of the design of the human skeleton through stress being imposed upon you, you'll revert in the direction of our last common ancestor with the chimpanzee. And it's a predictable way that you'll do that. So if you understand that concept, you have a pretty good idea about like, hey, the reason I'm testing arms and legs in terms of table tests is because I want to see how disevolved you've become through the imposed stresses that you've put on your system. And I'll have a good idea about which joint actions have been compromised, and I'll at least know what to do with it. And so I have trajectories that you can use to be able to recapture ranges that you've lost. And if you can't recapture them, then stick within the confines of these kinds of drills and exercises and appreciate the fact that you've ultimately sacrificed some movement capabilities, but maybe that allows you to be able to squat 800 pounds, you know? So it's like, to me, that's a big deal. And it's like, that's, again, it's like, it just, I'm trying to reinforce why there's no elevator pitch, because you can't have one for something that's that encompassing. It doesn't exist. It's impossible. It does it a disservice. And, you know, one of the hardest things I've tried to do is make minute long commercials for this. I'm like, it makes me want to like not do it, you know what I mean? But I realize like, you know, it doesn't just sell itself. Like, yeah, you got to sell the damn thing. So it's wild. Like, it really is wild. I'm very curious what happens ultimately when the book gets out there.
Yeah,
people that have no idea about this read it. Like, that's the thing I'm most curious about.
Well, I do think though, like in the last year, and we'll kind of delve into this a little bit, even though we talked about how much we fucking hate listening to people talk about marketing, but in a way, you've done a good job, I think, at exposing a larger group of the industry. Because when I first got to know you, you were at Springfield, you were coaching strongman, so it was like, and I always joke, I'm like when I first heard of Pat, he was some fucking weird guy breathing into balloons and lifting, you know, ungodly amounts of weight for his size. Because at the time, now, you know, the 175 strongmen are all fucking freaks, but back then it was like, you know, like if anyone was doing huge numbers, it was crazy.
Yeah.
So now, you know, I've seen this like this kind of evolution of like being able to reach a much larger crowd, and, you know, being divisive in your own way, but not that, for anyone that knows, this is not out of character. This is actually you. So this is not at all a character, but you're like, hey, like, this is what I think. I really don't, you know, as you say, you don't give a fuck what people think about you. It's like, that's fine. You can't deal with that. But it's been a really successful tool in getting the word out there through social media, which I'm sure isn't probably your favorite method of conversing.
I don't mind it because I feel like it's a game.
Yeah.
You know, it's a fun game because it's almost like I don't know. I find it really interesting what gets people to respond. And I also love figuring out what's going to trigger people. You know, it's like, oh, and like ideas will sometimes ideas will pop into my head and it's like, oh, this concept is going to make people lose their fucking minds. And I can't wait to put it out there. And then other times I'm like, I'm almost when I know that at this point, like I know the recipe for that. Like when it's going to be a huge hitter, I'm like, oh, this thing's going to really cause some problems out there. And I would like 90% of the time I'm right about that. But then other times I'll be so surprised at what gets no attention and what gets a ton of attention. And trying to figure out that formula kind of fascinates me because it's just another weird puzzle. I'm not good at like jigsaw puzzles and crossword puzzles. But I like solving puzzles that have no visual pieces to them in some ways. Like in a lot of ways, cellular physiology, like you can't see that shit. Like you have to imagine it in some ways, and you have to appreciate even like these renderings are like really abstract and bizarre. Like nobody's seeing inside of the mitochondrial membrane at this point and like witnessing these things. I don't care what kind of electron microscope you have. You can't actually see it. It's just still postulated. Like we have no idea at some levels, but I enjoy social media. I really do, because I do find it to be this really bizarre game of point counting and things of that nature. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is like a behavioral puzzle. I mean, one of the things that I've kind of come to the idea of is that, because Dean was like, yeah, people love when they think you're smarter than them. And I was like, I don't know that that's the case. I think what people like is when they see someone who they view as smart, confirming their ideas. And so I think the big reshare, or people who are in the mode where they're open to someone challenging their ideas and them going, oh shit, like maybe I was wrong, because I joke all the time. I say, like, I remember when I first started getting, even though I knew you, I wasn't, I had read a couple things of yours, but then when you really started launching into rethinking the big patterns and out there more, and I started really delving into it, I went, fuck, I might be completely wrong about everything I thought about these things. And that to me was like the big, like to me, then I was like, okay, now I feel like, I can read this stuff. And again, like you talk about abstraction in your earlier writings, I was kind of like, I kind of probably felt that way. I probably was like, oh, and then once I kind of got, you stabbed me enough to open up to, I always say, like, if something bothers me, there's probably something there. And once I got that going and went, okay, like, then all of a sudden I was like, oh, this isn't actually abstract at all. It's like speaking to very direct things. I just wasn't open to actually listening to it, I guess. But I think that is kind of the behavioral puzzle is like, for me, I remember that one of the things that I posted that pissed people off more than anything, and I don't have a very large following, but the people that did, was something that I didn't think was a big deal. I was like, I think they should lock up the barbells at the gym and, keep beginners away from them. People flipped the fuck out. And I was like, what? Like, why would you give someone a Swiss bar, some dumbbells or machines? And people were like, well, why would you do that? It became like infringing their rights. I'm like, I don't really mean locking them up, but like, why do these people need to use a barbell? And it flipped people out. Yeah. And then, it's all of a sudden it started getting traction. A lot of other people were saying it. And I was like, and you started seeing, and people were like, oh yeah, okay. And it's like, yeah, like that, it just seems to make sense.
Right. I think it's fun if you make it fun.
And it's helped you to develop your tone as well. Like, I think, and again, when you coming back to your book, saying like Mass 1 and 2, like those were fun because that's like pure Pat, like just like you said, stream of conscious. But I think I'm sure that like doing the seminars over the years has also forced you to take that and, like you said, be a little more disciplined in how you lay it out. And I'm hoping that at least that tone is there, because one of my favorite things is rethinking the big pattern, and this is kind of one of the things that always sticks in my head. And it's just how you go through. They're just repeating the same words over and over, talking about the lordotic and the kyphotic movement of the body, and you're just going boom, 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 and just down. But it is a quintessential like speech pattern that you have that fits in with your tone. And like you said, everything comes out. It's like, this is Pat Davidson, which I like, because I think fitness is totally missing that. People are all like, I'm just going to write this thing and have no character or anything to it. Whereas like I listen to a band, I want to listen to a band and be like, hey, this is that band.
That's exactly it, man. You know what? Like that's a perfect explanation. I really think that's it. And it's funny because excuse me, I know that in some instances where I've presented, you can take it too far. And I've done that. I've done the opposite too, where it's been, okay, well, I know I took it too far, so now I need to be as straight-laced as possible. And it needs, like, there's a sweet spot. It's like, you don't need to be the the NPR news reporter. You don't need to be Randy Savage. You have to be somewhere in between. And every now and then, maybe you can bounce off of one of those poles as you go through it. But for the most part, it's some kind of staying in between those lanes, like a slalom, as you teach these things. And it's an acquired skill.
Sure.
I try to, with almost anything, like if you're going to be a great fighter, guess what you have to do? Fight. If you're going to be a competitive lifter, guess what you have to do? Compete and lift in competitions. Like, you got to put yourself in the ring and get some savviness from that. And I try to use as many public speaking options and times as I can. I feel like it's like every week I do the power hour for an hour. I'm honing my craft. Like, I'm getting better at it. I present. I try to do a seminar as frequently as possible while not killing myself with travel. COVID has really shown me how nice it is to not travel, quite honestly, in terms of my health and training numbers and everything else. But it's I love that thought about it. Yeah, you're going to see a band. It's like you're gonna hear all the favorites, and you're gonna hear some new stuff. But who wants a band that doesn't put on a show and isn't kind of uniquely themselves? Like, if you're going to see Kiss, like, you want the costumes, you want the thing, like, and beforehand that that's what you're going to see. And yeah, it's like bands have different looks, and it seems like everybody now they look the same when they present. They have the same sort of I'm planning on not using a PowerPoint whatsoever for this next one. I hate the PowerPoint. It just puts people to sleep. Like, I'll provide it to people, but I'm not even going to use it. Like, I'm just going to absolutely go for this thing without any sort of a backdrop of slides. And that to me is me. Like I don't want to be so tied to something. I want to be able to allow myself to just kind of play in some ways.
Well, I think too, as people become more they start to read this, or they start to get, and they come in with a little bit more prerequisite knowledge as well. It also gives you the opportunity, because there's always going to be like the people there that are like, okay, I'm totally lost. And again, I think, back to the importance of understanding, like, the very first rethinking the big patterns, like one of the first things you said in there is like, hey, listen, at some point your brain's going to want you to turn off and say, like that's going to happen, and you got to fight it. Like, to be like, hey, you're going to have to be an active participant in this, I think is super helpful. And I don't know that I've ever actually heard another speaker say that, like you're going to be challenged here, so be ready for that. And all those speakers usually do have challenges, but you're like, they just kind of expect that you're going to get a little bored, and they're going to like take a break, and you're going to, which I think is, maybe antithetical to the purpose.
Yeah. And look, I don't even really take many breaks. Like,
no,
you said, it's like this thing, it's here, there goes the switch, and we're going until lunch, and then you can eat, and then there goes the switch, and we're going until this thing's done. And look, like, if you drown, I don't care. I'm not coming over and giving you any chest compressions or anything like that. I don't really care. Like, if you drown, good, you're out of the way. You're out of the gene pool for this thing. And that means there's more swimming area for the other people that are actually competent, capable individuals. So yeah, it's look, like, the thing, this industry, I think, needs to get rocked. Like, I really do think so. Like, it's people are still teaching the same damn things from so long ago. It's a bad joke. It's kind of like, and look, there's so much good stuff out there. It's just, I really do think that I don't, like, sometimes the feedback, I taught a mentorship program, and the mentorship program, I tried to turn these people into absolute savages. Like the whole point of it was like, you're going to be critiquing each other, and I'm grading you on how effectively you critique the other people in this mentorship program. So I also allowed them, I said, hey, like by week 7 or something like that, I turned it and I said, now it's your chance to critique me. So I gave them all the rough draft of the book, and I said, you will be evaluated by which team tears me to pieces the best. And what the comment that I got probably more frequently than any from the groups was, you need to make a rethinking the big patterns light. And it was like one of those things where because the thought process was that, the industry as a whole needs something more packaged and easy to understand and that kind of a thing. And it just reminded me so much of when I got to Brooklyn College originally to teach there. And one of the other professors came up to me and he said, listen, I need you to understand you're coming from Springfield College, and you taught the labs and stuff like that as a teaching assistant there. You're not going to have the same caliber of students here. And so you're going to need to kind of like bring the level down of what your expectations are. So I did the exact opposite. I put my foot to the floor and I made the most challenging possible courses that I could. And like not all students passed, like some students absolutely flopped, but they rose to the bar that I set for them. It was, and then I got rehired to go back to Springfield College. And I tried the first semester to actually implement the exact same level of difficulty and diligence there that I was using at Brooklyn College, and it crushed them. It crushed them. They weren't ready for it. It was almost like they didn't really rise to it. I think they had been, whatever it is, like when you hear that you're the best students in the best program or something like that, it's like you take that for granted. And all I know is by the second semester, they were ready for it. They had heard like, you better step your shit up, man, because this guy's not joking around. He might be younger and he trains and all that stuff, but like, this is the real deal in these classes. But look, like the lesson I learned from it was there is no need to make things simpler or easier or those kinds of things. The challenge is being able to explain concepts well. I don't care how complicated something is, if it's explained properly and you provide a reason for why understanding this is important, then people will bring themselves to whatever level it is that you set for them. That's not everybody, but the collective, the bell curve, I think, can be moved in a lot of ways. But I don't think that people, I think there's a couple things missing. I think that the pedagogical styles of many of the people trying to teach things is inadequate. I don't think that people do a good job of actually teaching or explaining things. It's like the really smart people oftentimes don't have the ability to teach the concepts in a way that comes across properly. And so it's like or people try to make it too easy, too marketable, to whatever the hell it is that those terms are. And I don't think that marketability is necessarily tied to things being simpler or easier or anything like that. I really don't think that's true. I think it's just quality, literally quality and diligence and providing something that makes sense. I think, and one of the things I point to try to support my statement here is actually the Game of Thrones. All right, I think that like it was the #1 TV show in the world, and for the first, we went 7 seasons. the first 5 or so seasons were really beautiful seasons. You know what I mean? Detailed and intelligent and character developing and really like in-depth plots and then it just went Hollywood and it fucking sucked.
Yeah.
Everybody hated it and it ruined it. And it was easier to understand. It was simpler. It was flatter. All of those things lived inside of it. And it's just, I don't think that things being involved is necessarily anti-marketable. I think that it's just something is poor about the product. You know, the way that it's organized can be poor. I've seen really smart people have very disorganized systems. And
Sure.
I don't know what to do with this. And that's the Achilles heel of it. I've seen really smart people just be terrible presenters. And that's their Achilles heel. So it's almost like you can have a mediocre product with a mediocre, like if it's mediocre, it'll do pretty well. Okay. So when I think about some things that have done amazingly well, you know, I think about the FMS and like Ray Cook is a great presenter. And he put a holistic model together that has a lot of depth to it when you consider it inside of itself. You know, it's got a number of tests that have a lot of details associated with them, with a scoring system. And, you know, depending upon the results of the scoring system, you go this way. There's a lot to it. It takes a lot of time to actually understand it. Now, it's not a valid model. It's been essentially invalidated through the scientific process of scrutiny, but it doesn't have that's its Achilles heel, which will probably kill it long term. But prior to that, it didn't have an Achilles heel as a marketable concept that can be presented, and it's got books attached to it, seminars attached to it, online attached to it. But there was no real weakness.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think one of the things that I kind of that it hits me that I want to come back to is when you're talking about Brooklyn College, you wanted to make people savages. And I think there's also this part that's missing is in the fitness industry right now, there's one of two things. You're either going to be educated and a giant pussy, or you're going to be just a meathead and everyone thinks it's stupid. And like the difference is that you're going to have both. Like you need to be smart, but you need to be able to, you know, in your terms that you always throw out there, you're going to have to eat shit and you're going to have to learn to like the taste of it.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it reminds me a lot of mixed martial arts. You know, in the beginning, if you knew Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, you're going to win. Okay. Yeah. That's all you need. Okay. And it was the same thing kind of in strength and conditioning back in the day. If you're really fucking strong, you're going to be a great strength coach. Okay. And then all of a sudden, like these guys got just good enough at jiu-jitsu to be able to like stop a takedown. And they're like, by the way, like I'm a pretty good kickboxer. And now that you can't determine where this fight's going to take place because I can stop your takedown, I'm going to knock you out. And then it's like, okay, well, so you had these different, you know, it was almost like, hey, these elite wrestlers can take you down. They can't submit you. So it was like these pockets were forming. And ultimately it got to this stage where now it's like you have to be an elite wrestler and like pretty damn good at everything across the board. Like if you have a major glaring hole, you're not going to be able to compete at a high level. It's just not going to happen. And the sport just continues to evolve in that way. And it's the same thing in our industry. It's like, congratulations, you are really strong. You're not, so what? Okay, there's a million people that are really strong. Congratulations, you know anatomy and biomechanics really well. But that's not enough because you haven't had the practical experience of actually getting strong or training at, you know, so it's all these pieces. It's like, have you trained, not just strength, but like real speed training, real agility, real like movement from that perspective, kind of a training. do you understand anatomy and biomechanics on an unbelievably high level? Do you understand program design? Like there's people out there that are these incredible multi-threats at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like I'm amongst that group. Like, if you need me to talk about, you know, speed development, I can do that. If you need me to talk about Olympic lifting, I can do that. If you need me to talk about, you know, powerlifting, if you need me to talk strongman, if you need me to talk about an anatomy and exercises that can change table tests, I can do that. Like, it's a full spectrum. Program design, volume management. It's there. Like, where do you need me to go? And I'm not the only person that falls into that description. But I look at myself as one of these early mixed martial artists that actually is a true mixed martial artist in the
Mm-hmm.
field of fitness. Okay, and I think that where I fit in, it's not that I can think of other people that are just as good as me, if not better in these areas, but I can present in a way and have a personality that makes me stand out a little bit more than most others. And I can write, I think that I can just explain things well and organize things well. And that helps with being able to be received by more people. But from a skill set and an understanding perspective, there's plenty of people that I can think of that are my equal, if not much more than me.
Mm-hmm.
That just a lot of people don't know about. But in my opinion, the wave or the force of this is unstoppable.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the more that other people like me are successful, and the more the better it is for me. And the more successful I am, the better it is for other people that are kind of this same cloth. But yeah, I think that the industry is going to experience a shock as this holistic coach becomes the standard to which people have to reach. And it'll help the other, like, from a fitness industry standpoint, the more in shape you look, the better. Okay. So we need people that live it to be part of this model as well. And, you know, I'm trying to do my part by just going on a damn diet. You know what I mean? Like, you can't be a fat ass and reach the masses in some ways. So it's, it really requires a lot of discipline and appreciation of like what matters in every facet, including living the damn thing. You can't just know it and try to push it through just your mind. Like, you have to embody it as well. And you know, I think like a guy like Kyle Dobbs is a great example of that in some ways. He looks the part, he acts the part, he knows the part, and it helps when you have all those pieces kind of coming together, you know. And it requires more of that.
But again, you know, you talk about like what's he been doing lately? Is now he's like focused. He's like, okay, I'm going to focus on running. You know, like back to like something I did a long time ago. But like, hey, let's work on mechanics. Like, work on all these things. That, I mean, is he really going to coach many runners? Or I mean, doesn't it really does mostly, you know, business, like helping people grow their businesses. So it's probably not like, but like you said, you have to be holistic. Like, if you're going to work with a large swath of, especially other coaches,
Yeah.
like you have to develop them. And yeah, it's now, what do you think is going to be the kind of the impetus to kind of push this? Because my question always is like, yes, I see this amongst the people that I associate with,
Yep.
because I'm biased, and that's who, like, people say like, you know, whatever influencer, this guy could help you. I'm like, I don't fucking care, because I don't want to be associated with them. I don't care how many followers they have. I don't care. They write dumb shit, and I would rather not be associated with them than have any help in my career or whatever it might be.
Yep.
So how do we, you know, kind of make that shift of marketers who happen to have worked out, you know, at some point, versus the people who, like you, who have are actually kind of marketing savvy, but it's all based on results and on what you've done?
I don't have the answer for that. I know that I never, you get these weird messages sometimes through Instagram where it's like, hey, partner with us and like share some of our stuff and we'll share some of your stuff and we'll make sure you gain a following more, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, I don't care. Like, I'm not like the only people I want are the people that like, are worth it. I don't want to just this false bloated following number for no reason. Like I'm in this for not a number, but for an impact and a result. And like I just continue to do my thing to try to continue to grow a steady, to demonstrate just increased growth over time in a positive fashion. And I think I'm just trying to think like I have my tactics that I use for that, but for this to become more of a mass thing, like I think it just requires time. Like I don't think it's any different than training results. It's like just keep doing the right thing on a consistent basis, and sure, like there's I'm sure there's books on how-tos for social media marketing and stuff. I think a lot of them are kind of bullshit in some ways. Like I don't think you need fancy pictures. I don't think you need amazing graphics. I don't think you need anything. I think that you can do it through pure guerrilla warfare as long as you have something that can cut through the noise. That's really it. Like, because it's all noise and it's mostly the same noise. It's like social media is like this white noise kind of a thing. And in some ways you need like a piercing screech to get through there. And it's not always just something that's so outrageous. Sometimes it's just something that's different, or it's weird because like I really love Robert Greene's books. I think that they're highly underrated. And I think it's in Art of Seduction. It's either that or the 48 Laws of Power. He talks about understanding the spirit of the times that you're in. And that some people have the ability to understand and feel the spirit of the times, and to know that that is a shifting phenomenon. Like the example that he gives in the story section of that chapter is the French Revolution. And like the people that failed to appreciate the spirit of the times, and their failure resulted in their heads getting cut off. And whereas others understood and had a sense for this new spirit of the times that was this revolutionary spirit, and they played along with it very effectively. And the result of that was their ability to rise to power. And only a few were able to really fully make it through that whole thing and navigate that maze. But you have to feel what the spirit of the industry is at any point in time. What flavor is it? What direction is it going in? And there has to be some level of capturing that with what you're doing, while simultaneously being able to have a slightly different take on it. But not a different take that's just wrong, but a different perspective or a different analysis or something that is still going to be correct and helpful and all these sorts of things. So it's not a straightforward thing. It's like a nebulous kind of a maze that I think you're dealing with. But at the
buddy of mine pulled out
ahead.
a quote last night that was and I forget who it was by, but it's culture is the vanguard of revolution. And I immediately thought when you said that, the French Revolution, because I think you think about Voltaire and you look at the writing of the time, and it's kind of the same thing. Like this, maybe this is the social media is the writing of our time, and if we can pay attention, like you said, to that cultural contextual or context, then you can actually find where to cut through. And I think that's, and we always joke because you took a visual medium of Instagram and just slapped a bunch of words on it and killed the visual part of it. And now there's 100 people in fitness that are doing the same thing.
Yeah. One of the few
And
things that started. Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't really work as well for them because I think they miss the spirit of it. Is like what you're doing is you're taking a very complex piece, taking out a little part of it, slapping on something that like is visceral, that like gets people going, and they most of them probably don't even read the thing, but they're going to comment because they either fucking hate you for writing it or they think it's the most brilliant thing ever, and it regardless it sparks conversation. And like Dean and I were talking yesterday, one of the funny things too is like you get very few people that like troll you more than once because you generally eviscerate them in a way that they're like, yeah, this isn't really worth playing this game. So you also have to be able to have that in your pocket if you want to play that game, which I don't think many people do.
Yeah, and I also just don't give a fuck either. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's a big part of it. Like, where it's like, you know what? Like, I hope this is the most fucking hateful thing anyone's ever said to you in your life. I hope this is a thing that you lose sleep over. Like, and I'm gonna just go there with reckless abandon because I don't give a fuck on that front. Like, I've fought people that I know I'm gonna lose to. Okay. And like, and it look like it's just that kind of attitude where it's like, man, like it's just me here. Okay. I don't have to answer to a boss. I don't have to answer to anybody. If I'm going to punk you, if I have a chance to punk you, I'm going to do it. And I'll do it on any format, any front. Like, I'll buy you a goddamn plane ticket to my front door. And I'll find a guy on the street to video me busting your teeth down the back of your throat if you want to take it that far. So it's like, nobody's ready for that. And they're like, oh, this is this professional guy. It's like, yeah, I can be if I want to be, but I'll get down and dirty too. And it's like, I don't see any reason why I can't do that and go in every possible direction. And it's like, like a lot of people are just plain and simple not interesting too. It's like they're so within these lines, and it's like, the last thing that I think anyone should aspire to is being boring and predictable and having nothing to say. And also, like, people feel things and think things, and then they never say it or go there. And it's like, I don't want to do that. I really don't think that that's something that I want the rest of the world to do either. I want people, when they actually think things and believe things, I like it when people say it. And look, now there's this chance that you might have said something really fucking stupid that you can learn something through, or you might have said something that like is kind of amazing.
Yeah, I mean that, like, something can be profound that could seem stupid in itself, and sometimes the most profound thing is simplistic in nature. Like, and we see it like in social media. Like, some of the things that I see shared so much, I'll be like, that's fucking moronic. Like, that's just a list of things like that, and people are like, this is genius, this is brilliant. I'm like, it's not. Like, someone just wrote 5 words down. Like, how the fuck is that's smart? But that's not really what people are looking for. They're, a lot of times they're not. Now, I think, again, I think your crowd is generally trying to elevate themselves, but maybe not all of them. I mean, because there's a lot of people that say fucking ridiculously stupid things on your post, thinking they're agreeing with you, and they're like, I think one of my favorites was you making fun of TRX, and someone says, "Yeah, that's why I use rings." I was like, oh, completely missed the entire concept there.
Oh God, yeah.
So we're going to close up here because I don't want to keep you too long, and we didn't really talk about anything. Which actually, I'm kind of glad because again, Dean's not on. Dean really want to talk about the GOTA stuff, and we can do that another time. But I'm glad because I am really interested in the people kind of outside, and maybe we'll have that conversation too, because one of the things that I like so much about you is that you are completely who you are. You don't give a fuck, and you've gone through some serious shit. Like, you like everyone sees like you're this PhD and like this has not been an easy run for you to get to where you are, and it'll probably continue to be difficult. Like that
Yeah,
you're the kind
man.
of guy.
Yep. No, it's look, like I come from a long history of traumatic childhood experiences that sets you up for a lot of problems in adulthood, which I've dealt with. And it's not like I just suddenly fixed everything, like I consistently step in new piles of shit all the time. And like, oh, how did I fucking put myself into this situation? Wow. Like, but yeah, I mean, I've dealt with drug addiction. I've dealt with alcoholism. I've dealt with, a father that I never really met because he was in and out of jail, as far as I know. I dealt with a mother that died when I was 19 of a drug overdose. I dealt with, her sister dying a few months around the same time of a drug overdose. A cousin that I grew up with dying of a drug overdose. I grew up, with my primary caregivers of my grandparents dying when I was 8 and 10 years old. I grew up in a with a mother that really had a lot of neglect and, so abandonment, neglect, death, loss, pain, rage. And those are all things that have gotten me, like, they've been fuel and they've been chains that at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had to learn, and I'm grateful for the amount of learning and the continuous learning I still have. So I have these modules inside of me that can become very active, controlling parts of my life, where I have an addict module that can try to escape from, like, whenever I encounter something that's emotionally difficult, I have the possibility of an addict module kicking on and trying to do whatever kind of horrendous behaviors it can think of to not face pain. Like, I know how to not face pain very effectively. I've got so many distraction techniques that I've acquired through that history, whether it be drug addiction or addiction through other people, relationships, other kinds of behaviors. And I also have a very angry child module inside of me that can kick on, and I can become very childlike and have explosive rage, and those kinds of things kick in. And it's very difficult to have a complete adult life when you have an addict and a child potentially running your life for you. And I've had to go through a lot of therapy and a lot of rehab and a lot of things and read a lot of books to have these concepts explained to me, so that now I can begin to see that when I'm participating in behaviors and doing life actions that are really questionable, that it's probably being driven through those primary modules of an addict and a child that are and it's kind of like, I know that I'm not the only fucking person, because a lot of people have problems, and I think a lot of people that get into fitness, it's a solution. All of these things, they're all solutions in the beginning, and then they start to become a bigger problem than what you were trying to solve earlier. Alcohol solved my personal hatred in the beginning. It made me a new person. It made me a different person, and it allowed me to really enjoy being that person. And in the beginning, it was great. Like, I could interact with other people socially in a way that I never could before, and I felt connected and all this sort of stuff. And then, very quickly, I was pissing my bed and unable to go to work and staggering and getting into, waking up with missing shoes and chipped teeth and bleeding from various parts of my body. And then it's like this bigger problem. But it's kind of like there's extremes. I feel like for me, I can be extreme with all of those end results. But at a certain point, like for me, I like the fact that it's extreme, because it makes me reach a bottom faster, I think, than a lot of people. And
Yeah.
and once you hit that
Willing to
bar,
cut losses. Like, you
Yeah.
know when to cut losses.
100%. So, I think that it's a if you're willing to face your demons, like really face them, and it's something that's look like I've avoided some recent demons very, very effectively from an avoidance standpoint, and I'm trying to face them right now. I'm at a bit of a critical point of my life again, and I'm always willing to. Well, I'm not always willing to, but at this point in time, I'm willing to take a look in the mirror again and to address some things for me, and face a lot of pain, a lot, and appreciate that most of my reactions that are uncomfortable or that are, it's like, am I going to continue to listen to the angry, neglected, abused kid that still lives inside of me that can get triggered from things? Am I going to allow this escape artist addict module to just try to distract me? Or am I actually going to sit with some shit? And right now I'm going to sit with some shit and deal with it and grow up a little bit more, which never ends. But it's, look, like I do think that there's a lot of potential areas that you can add value to others in their lives. And I know that this is like our country, our culture is a breeding ground for trauma and abuse and neglect and behaviors that cripple people in their adult life that they don't even realize are crippling them. And, if nobody talks about them, like people, a lot of people probably think, oh, this guy's got it fucking made, like, and it's like, yeah, I've been fortunate. I've been fortunate enough where I did have family that really valued education and was willing to help me financially get to college. And if I didn't have that, I'd probably be dead right now. Not probably, definitely dead, because I'm not good with working with my hands. And if I was working in a grocery store, stocking shelves, I would have killed myself a long time ago, So I had help to be able to get to a place where I could appear successful, but it's I think that on an individual level, people have the ability to unlock better lives for themselves in a lot of ways, whether it be professionally, whether it be personally, and a lot of times they just don't have the right tools, and they have to be willing to first admit to themselves, I could be better in these phases of my life. It's like I've got a rich history of 12-step programs, like I'm not doing well is kind of the first step. And I'm going to be willing to listen to something else that's a better tool. That's the first step, And it's like, if you can't do that, then, you're just going to continue to prolong and perpetuate this stuff. And it's like, you can distract yourself. There's a million ways you can distract yourself. Like, you can distract yourself with trying to, appear to be fancy, like, look at me, look at the clothes I'm wearing, look at the car that I'm driving, look at the girl I've got on my arm, look, and trust me, the rest of the world doesn't give a fuck, okay? And you're just hiding from all of the things that are making you miserable inside, that nothing outside of you can address anyways and fix anyways, you're not gonna fill in these, like, I'm a person where I have a hole inside of me that is never gonna be filled up by booze or by cocaine or by yachts or by cars or by money or by women or by anything. It's something that's only going to be addressed by me going into my past and really examining the layers and the things that really traumatized the fuck out of me and that caused me to continue to be miserable and to continue to try to perpetuate the same behaviors and the same actions through different distraction techniques. So it's like I'm at least at a point right now, sitting here talking to you, where I can recognize that, and that I know that, look, like, you can go to meetings, you can talk to other people that have been through this kind of like have had their own similar problems. You can read books on these topics. There's so many tools that are available to you. And it's up to you to actually take the actions and go through and use those tools, but also the fact that you have to deal with pain. The only way through pain is to experience the pain. And if you're not willing to deal with it and like realize, like, I'm fucking angry now. What am I really angry at? Is it this acute event that's happening right now? Or is it, something that's way in the fucking past, And it's almost invariably something way in the past that you're really angry about.
Oh yeah.
And you're going to be like the sadness and all those things that you're going to face, like if you face them. And if you don't go through it, you're going to numb out and you're going to face it later. You're never going to actually move past it. So look, like, I just think there's a lack of willingness amongst people that maybe appear successful or appear to have their shit together, who have probably had their own demons and battles and things of that nature. I don't know, maybe there are, maybe there aren't. All I know is I've had that. And other people that have had that maybe think that they're not worthy of having a good life or to feel good or that it's impossible. Look, it's hard. It's hard work. You can't do anything about the stuff that's happened, but you can, in fact, find tools and resources that you can use to make your present better and to make your future more manageable. So I'm happy to be an advocate and to say that I have a lot of personal experience and personal continuation of this in my life.
Yeah, and I think that's also why you're able to connect, right? Like you don't, I mean, you're not like publicly talking, like, some people use that as their platform, and that drives me crazy. But your ability to connect with people is because, like, those of us who go through this shit are chameleons in a way. We have to learn to act. We have to learn to do these things, and once we can kind of start working on them and we can be okay with being ourselves, we still have those tools of like, hey, let me get, I can be with this group. Like you said, I mean, I didn't ever want to talk to anybody at a party, but you give me, a bottle of vodka and a 8-ball. I'm like, I'm everyone's best friend.
Nope.
No problem.
Yeah.
But, and so, but then then when we come out of that and have to relearn those skills, all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, I'm 100 times better at this than anybody else because I had to fake it for 20 years, so I can do this. But, and again, and we'll kind of, I think this is a really great place to kind of leave it off, because I do want to have this in a really more in-depth conversation with you, because I think you're a person that can, just your physical figure, your intellectual figure, all these things, talking about this would, in a more in-depth conversation, I think could really help a lot of people. But one of the things that I was so surprised with you, and I don't know why I was, but in booking a personal training session and being how good of a personal trainer you are, not because of any knowledge or anything like that, but because of how fun the session was. And we forget, like, hey, that's actually this big piece of the puzzle that I think so many people are missing.
Yeah. And, I had to learn that through, through being terrible at personal training when I first went to New York. I mean, terrible. Like, I was, like, it's funny, like, if you work, like, as a professor, everybody kisses your ass. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, and they kiss your ass because you're the person giving them grades, and people, or whatever, you're an authority figure, you're this, you're that, and all of a sudden you get really sure of yourself. Like, everybody loves fucking working with me. I'm the man, shit like that. And then all of a sudden, if you're working with rich people in Manhattan and you're their personal trainer, you're their fucking driver, you're their nail person, you're their horse person, you're their butler, you're just another service provider for that person. And if you like, they're like, what is this guy fucking doing trying to like coach me? Like, I don't even know. Like, I was so bad at it that it was like, oh God, and I was not going to be able to pay rent. Like, I was losing people. I'd come in the next day, I'd see the client I used to have working with another trainer, and I'm like, they're working with that fucking person. Jesus Christ, that person,
An idiot.
like, but it's all another one of these things where it's like, well, it's on me, man. It's not the client's fault. It's not like it's my fault, and I got to do something different. I got to figure out what's important here. And I had to look at other trainers that were successful and try to figure out what the hell are they doing that's making them so successful. And again, like, copy it, mimic it in the beginning, which I'm great at. Like, it's funny, like, in a lot of ways, my whole life has been about like having no idea what the fuck I want, like none whatsoever, and looking out and being like, I think that guy seems to be doing pretty well. I'm just going to act exactly like that
100%.
guy. Okay. And, and I'm going to copy all the actions that person does and like their trajectory in some ways. So it just was like going back to that same toolbox again of being like, well, all right, I need different clothes. I have to wear somewhat like brighter colors than I'm used to, or like, just I have to look different than the current way that I'm looking. And I need to talk different, and I need to figure out how to make people relax and seem to have fun, what's involved with that. Because if I don't do that, I'm gonna go broke. And then you see like the real masters of it. And I've never seen anybody better than Marcos. Marcos Rodriguez,
Dude, so good.
the best personal trainer I've ever seen. And it's like I'm around him while he's training other people, and I'm like, I want to be in this. and it's like, well, and you can't be him. Like, he is such an entity to himself, but you can pick up some of the things like the fun and the style and realize, like, if you don't have that as part of this thing, you're in big trouble. So, and look, like, if you're around it every day, you're going to absorb some parts of it, and the other parts of other people that you can use. Sorry, my computer wanted to start like a virus scan all of a sudden. But it's look, like, I've been around people that are excellent at it. Marcos being the primary example, and just trying to pick that stuff up. And if you like, it was kind of what I was alluding to with like talking about why the FMS was successful and why some other marketable models are successful. Like, FRC, for instance, in Spina, like I haven't met him, but everybody I've ever talked to is like, this is a very charismatic guy. He can really present. The model itself is thought through, and it's intelligent, and it's in depth and all this kind of stuff. There's not like this big glaring hole in it. Like, it looks the part, it sounds the part, it acts the part. And it's the same thing for personal training. Like, if you don't, like, I like doing personal training because of the accountability it puts on me to stay in shape, because nobody wants a fat trainer. Like, and my business gets better as my body composition improves. And as my body composition improves, a lot of things get better, And if I don't have that need to do it, I'll probably not do it so much, So, it's, I think like a great ending sort of a topic or area to talk about is, I do think that a lot of people lack the ability to appreciate, like, people can see all the variables that are involved with something, but a lot of times they're unable to create the appropriate hierarchy of which is more important than others. It's like, yeah, sure, like, biomechanics is very important when it comes to training. But in the instance of personal training with, like beginner type individuals from a fitness standpoint, it is clearly not variable number one. I mean, not even remotely close. Like you're picking the fly shit out of the pepper if you're trying to make that variable number one and the primary thing that you're really trying to drive home. You have to identify in which particular case you're in, what the major primary variable is. And if you miss that, then it's going to be a failure. So being able to have a fairly fluid appreciation of the situation that you're in, and to have a working model of a sliding scale of the importance of the variables that impact the outcome, I think is a mental skill or just an overall skill set that is severely lacking. And one that, if you're not willing to just, self-examination and honest appraisal of whether or not something that you're involved with is not working at the level that it could be working at, and that it's underperforming. If you're not able to do that, then it's not, you're going to be held back. And I think that's a shame. And look, it's a never ending process. It is truly, people need to be process oriented in this and appreciate, like, it's never over. It's always got to be, I think that you can learn the world through training,
Mm-hmm.
And if you take a break, you shut it down for a while and you've gone backwards. It's never like, hey, this is the end all be all. It stays this way forever. No, it's a constant evolution. If there's any, like, evolution is such an important theory, not just on the life in this planet, but on the way that ideas work, the way that concepts emerge, the way that the economy works, the way that industry works. If you stop the diligence of keeping up with the evolution of any particular thing, then you might find yourself extinct in that area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and you're right. I think that's kind of the perfect way to and I know that one of the concepts that you and I both are pretty adamant about is that, like, not to-do list. Like, there's a couple things that if I don't do them, everything else is fine. And I think, again, that speaks to addiction. The beautiful lesson of being an addict is, if I just don't do that thing, everything else it might not be perfect, but I'm not going to be in jail. I'm not going to be in rehab, and I'm not going to be dead. Like, those three things are pretty good to avoid. Everything else is gravy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, I really appreciate it. Like, let's just real quick. I want to, see where people can find you. Obviously, the book's going to be coming out. That's going to be through RP, but you'll be able to have a link, obviously, your Instagram.
Yep, that's pretty much it. I was at some point I'll have a Rethinking the Big Patterns online platform. That's a little bit. That's probably, now that the book is pretty close to being done, I'll ramp that up and make sure that kind of corresponds. But and that'll be linked to my Instagram as well. So everything that people would want to find through me, Instagram's the easiest place, or Indeed.
That's right. I have wrestled with an alligator. I done tussled with a whale. I done handcuffed lightning, throw thunder in jail.
You can't stop me.
I'm going to win. It ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward.
I just keep getting stronger.
Stronger?
Stronger. Stronger.